Glad to have you back. Now on to the last leg of the show. The lingering fuel scarcity in some parts of the country may spread and worsen as Depot and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria is threatening to go on strike over 650 billion naira debt.
Yes, the association last week gave the federal government a 14-day ultimatum to settle the debt owed its members as subsidy claims by the previous administration. Now, the association warned that it would be forced to shut all its depots and disengage workers if the government failed to settle the debt within the period given.
The executive secretary of the association, Olufemi Adewale, said the only option to solve the problem of increasing debt burdens of borrowing to pay staff was to immediately commence massive staff disengagement. Now, this unfortunately would have a multiplier effect on the nation-wide supply and distribution of petroleum products, which presently is still a struggle, and of course it would jack up the unemployment rate as well in the country.
There you go. For a government that says it wants to improve employment,
absolutely,
you know,
yes.
that stands about 14% or more right
Indeed.
now.
But we have in the studio with us a public affairs analyst, Achike Chude, joining us to talk about this. Good morning to you and thank you for
good morning.
joining us
Good
on
to
the
see
show.
you.
Now, which is worrisome really, that the threat of strike, which is going to make life even more miserable really for Nigerians, or the threat of disengaging a lot of workers in the health oil sector?
Well, either way, the consequences will be severe, you know, and add to the burden Nigerians are already going through, you know, all over the country. Again, it is also exceedingly unfortunate. The reality is that some of us have always believed, especially since this fuel crisis, started, you know, again, this fuel situation. Some of us have always believed that there is much more to, you know, than what the government is telling us, that they are not giving us the full picture.
Story.
And in a country where every government, you know, action is looked at with suspicion, you know, it is very difficult that a situation that seems to have been resolved in the past 2 years, all of a sudden resurfaces. And
did we really resolve it, or we just, you know, papered
it was,
over
of course.
Did we really resolve it?
Well, that's a good observation, but the reality is that people were driving into the filling stations and they were buying fuel. So it seemed on that basis resolved. But obviously there were underlying issues that had not been resolved. And for as long as the foundation of any situation is not, you know, properly addressed, then whatever you put on top of it would ultimately, you know, show the cracks or collapse. And that is exactly what we are seeing. And this one is just one more of the contradictions that has characterized that particular industry. And the questions you need to ask really is how legitimate are the demands of these people?
That's the point. A very good question, and that's a question I'd like to ask.
Is it based on facts? The government should know, because whatever interaction, whatever arrangement they did with the government. It doesn't matter whether it is this government or whether it is the previous government. Government, all of us have agreed it's a continuum. So when you enter into government, you get into government, you take over the assets and liabilities of even the previous government. And so they are saying, and I want to believe that there is evidence to this effect. So if there's evidence, obviously they are telling the truth, that they are being owed 650 billion naira. That is a lot of money, which if you don't pay them, a lot of their businesses will go under. In fact, there have been insinuations that AMCOM, the Assets Management Company of Nigeria, has been taking over a lot of their assets. And there might be some truth to that. One of the major filling stations recently at Bagada was recently taken over. They brought in a team of policemen and all of that, sealed the place and put AMCOM, you know, somewhere there.
And this has dire consequences on Nigeria's economy, because the power sector is not really functioning as it's supposed to be. A lot is riding on,
of course.
On petroleum supply.
Unfortunately, that's why the country is the way it is. Because, you talk about energy. You cannot drive any economy without energy. And energy is not just about, electricity and the rest. It's an industry itself. You have gas, you have, some of these things that, the PMS and all
diesel.
of that. So if you can't have access to it, people can't have access to that. You ground industries. You grind, social and economic activities. And the effect on the economy is unquantifiable to a very large extent. For an economy that is already not doing well, that you need to move to the next level. For you to continue to linger in this perpetual crisis, energy crisis and so on, simply tells you that no matter the best intention of government, no matter whatever policy they come up with and the rest, they would always continue to fall short of expectations.
But does government's body language even indicate that they're ready to meet this oil depot owners halfway, if not fully? 650 billion naira subsidy claim. Yeah. Subsidy, according to this government, was removed in May of 2016.
Yeah, well,
so subsidy from when to when? Yeah. And we were told by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo that the federal government is not paying any subsidy.
Even the president said it when he was out.
That it is the NNPC.
Yeah, yeah.
And who should the depot owners be going after?
It should be the federal government. I mean, these are the people they said they had transaction with. You understand? The federal government through the NNPC or whatever arrangement. And like I said, it's about evidence. If the government is owing these people, then the government has a duty, has an obligation.
Look, they had a meeting with Mekanti Baru in January.
Yeah.
Of course, they had threatened to go on strike, and they called off that strike based on that meeting. Obviously, there were agreements reached. And
because there's a crisis of governance in this country. We have talked about some of these issues of strikes, for instance. You talk about ASO, you talk about NASO, you talk about so many. All of these things are related to funding. You understand? Allowances, obligations, financial obligations that government ministries or parastatals or the federal government also have with these organizations. And
but
so
funding that can't be sustained.
There is a challenge really, because the government already said it's not paying subsidy, and then of course we've established that NNPC is paying. So will the federal government now sanction NNPC to repay the debt? And if so, what kind of image would he, speak for the government?
No. Well, the issue is, I mean, it's not a privilege to be paid money that is owed you.
Yes,
it's a right, and you must demand that right. Look,
after telling the public that there was no such amount?
I think what they are saying is that this is a throwback to the Jonathan era. That some of these monies were accumulated during the Jonathan administration. And that was why I was saying that it's irrelevant whether this government inherited the liabilities of the previous government, because they also inherited assets of the previous
Okay, now let's assume this government
yes.
goes ahead and pays the 650 billion. Or in some other cases, I mean, the figures keep changing anyway. In another case, we hear it's about 800 billion.
Yeah.
After this is paid, will it really solve the problem?
No, it's not going to solve the problem. I mean, that's why I say it's a complex situation. It's multifaceted. It's not because the fundamentals have not been done. Look, you cannot keep on spending money. First of all, we have seen the exchange value of our currency. I mean, vis-a-vis the dollar and other major currencies of the world. And it's not positive. And you keep on sending money out of this country. You understand? Keep on depleting our foreign exchange reserve because you have to keep on importing refined products that we have in abundance.
Last year alone, we spent
so we get back
$5.6 billion.
So this is what we're saying.
How sustainable is that?
It is irresponsible for any government not to look for a way out of this quagmire.
Which is the best way? Really?
I mean, we have talked about it several times. Even the government tends to. I mean, sometimes even when they talk, you have a feeling, a distinct feeling that they understand.
So what is the solution?
It is the building. You cannot have, a country that is the 6th largest a producer of crude. You understand? And then you have to take your crude to countries that don't even have oil reserves for them to refine for you, then you bring it back.
It's coming up. The federal government has signed agreement with Niger to build a refinery
I don't even want to hear.
Modular refinery will come up with. That was why I asked you, so that at least the government is doing something.
No, the government is not doing something.
Okay.
You cannot put the fate of an entire nation in the hands of one man. From the moment this government came to power, they said building refineries was a priority, that they had identified that, so that we can save scarce foreign resources. Foreign exchange. They have not been able to do that. At the initial stage, almost on a quarterly basis, Minister of State for Petrol, Kachuku, was giving us an update about the state of the refineries. Sometimes he says it's gotten to 30%.
In fact, he told us by January
40% completion, and they kept on shifting, and we kept on seeing an improvement. All of a sudden, we are told that they are operating at 10%, capacity and the rest. Monies have been spent.
Possible?
Why have we been unable to do that? And they are waiting for one man, Dangote, to bring his refinery on stream so that the country now finally kills the refinery.
Is it possible that some cabal really wants the status to remain the same, for Nigeria to continue to import fuel because good sums of money is finding its way into some certain pockets?
You have cabals in the energy sector who don't want...
Cabals everywhere.
Who don't... cabals everywhere. You have cabals in the education sector. You have cabals in this and that. The Constitution does not recognize the existence of cabals. The Constitution does not. It's not a constitutional provision. What the Constitution recognizes is a government that governs for the interest and welfare of the people.
How do you determine?
And whatever it is that stands as an obstruction in the way of the government now has a duty, using the resources of the entire state, to move against those people that are working against the interests of the people.
As a duty, but then how do you determine the sincerity of a government, really, per time? Because at the time, the officials in the oil sector were giving us figures and updates reports on how the refineries were being repaired and all that. I spoke with a staff of the NNPC, anonymously, of course, and he told me that what you are hearing is a lie, that nothing is going on in any of the refineries. In fact, we are telling you this crude oil is being taken, that it's a lie. The person told me at that point, in fact, I mentioned it on the show at that time. So how do you measure the integrity of any government saying the truth? Bringing you back to the question you just asked.
Would you question what
the more we see, the less we understand?
Would you now question what the anonymous source told you, that it's a lie? If it were true, you will see the manifestation of what he told you. But because it's falsehood, because it's not truth, we're not seeing it on ground. The refineries are not working. They are not delivering crude oil, refined petroleum products to the country and all of that. So obviously what the person told you about the statement the government made based on, vis-a-vis what we see, as a manifestation of that statement, tells you that the person was telling you the truth.
Is this government concerned at all about getting results? And if you're not getting results that will make you look good, why is it that nobody is paying, no heads are rolling? Ibe Kachukwu came out with his letter that leaked. Nothing has been done about it. We just papered over it.
Well, Baru later on said it went through the normal channel, and Ibe Kachukwu kept quiet, so we don't know. And they're telling us
Ibe Kachukwu is still not talking anymore.
Well, again, it's part of the contradiction. It's part of the contradiction of the Nigerian state. And it's not just something that has to do with this government. It still tells you, and that's what we keep on saying, that there are fundamental contradictions. Yes, that there are some certain fundamental contradictions of the Nigerian state that has plagued virtually every government in power. And so what that tells you is that when they say they are coming in to make a change, and we see that change being translated in the malfeasance of the past, it simply tells you that change has not occurred. You understand? So those things that made it impossible in the past for them, to begin to put things in place like refineries and the rest that will make the lives of the people better, are still those things that are making sure.
All right.
Yes.
An analyst earlier talked about about changing the system, and not just that. That in fact, when you want to fight corruption or change the system to make it more functional, you have to look at the civil service. Could that be one of the problems, really? Because politicians will make promises, and then when they come in there, different things happen. Would it be because they were not part of the system and they just usually have 4 years to perform, whereas civil servants have been there for years?
Forever.
It's a deep-rooted problem. We have a problem with the civil service. There's no doubt about that. All of those things that had been associated over the years with the civil service, anonymity, neutrality, and all of that,
faceless,
over the years have been eroded. Now you have civil servants that are closely aligned with the, political party of the day. At the state level, in most cases at the federal level, using the structure of the state also to promote the interests of political parties. So you have this synergy between the civil servants and the politicians. We have always known that. And what that translates to is the ongoing corruption,
the inefficiency,
ineffectiveness, lack of patriotism, and so on that we see. You understand? So the combination has always been there. So they are also part of the problem of the country. But we cannot continue. You see, the reality, and that's what we keep on saying, that people who presented themselves to the Nigerian people and said, look, we understand the problems of the country.
We can solve.
You understand? It is our duty to solve these problems, and we will solve the problems. At the initial stage, first year, second year, Nigerians are willing to give you, are willing to be patient. Let's see what you can do. But after a particular period of time, they don't want to start listening anymore. You understand? All they want are solutions. Look at the issue, for instance. A lot of people have been deriding Donald Trump and the rest. He made a lot of promises. As unpopular as Donald Trump is, as obnoxious as he is, every single statement that he made, and no matter how atrocious you think that some of the things he's doing and so on might be, this was the basis of his election. He promised the American people he was going to build the wall. He promised the American people he was going to make America great, economically and in so many other ways and the rest. And slowly, whether you like him or not, he is walking the talk. And so that is what is expected of the politicians of our time. And again, part of the problem is this.
But really, did they promise us anything? I recall Jonathan said, look, I'm not going to make any promises. I'm just going to do what I need to do as president. And I doubt very much.
And he didn't win the election.
This administration saying we're going to fix security, we're going to fix the economy and tackle corruption. It's almost so vague. But let's come back to the issue at hand now. How do we solve the crisis in the oil sector? Ibe Kachuku said if we remove subsidy, there will be freed funds to fix the refineries. The refineries remain unfixed.
I remember the Ibrahim...
And that the NNPC alone cannot continue to import
Let me tell you, I remember the Ibrahim Mantu Committee.
Yes.
Sitting after one of the major strikes over subsidy in this country. The committee was set up, headed by the former deputy president of the Senate, Ibrahim Mantu. And it had all manners of stakeholders, including labor and all of that. And they came up with a voluminous report. I have, part of that report, very big volume, about what they were going to do to, transform the situation when they set up a special fund as a fallout of the oil subsidy that will now be used to address some of the issues. They call it palliative committee report and all of that. We are going to build road infrastructure, especially so that the problems complained about by tanker drivers will be taken care of. We are going to do this on to the refineries and all of that. Up to today, after how many years, not one single thing has been done. So ultimately,
is it not
it's
because
about
the
politics.
volume was just too big for anybody to
they had a committee of stakeholders, and they must know when you're coming up with this, because you're also working, you also had government representatives and so on. And so ultimately at the end of the day, there's a commitment you make.
And sadly, really, it seems that we could come back maybe in a year's time or two.
And we'll still be talking about
this.
But we have talked about it before, and we are talking about it today.
Back.
Obviously, and that's why somebody once said, and he's fond of saying that, and sometimes you tend to think that maybe it's true. He says that the more things seem to change, the more they remain the same.
He said, well,
speaking of the refineries and the turnaround maintenance that's never happened, maybe it's Nigeria that needs the turnaround.
Oh, we do. It's fundamental.
Well, what happened at one point, and almost the amounts used to establish the refineries spent on it to refurbish. It
defies all logic, really. All right, Tachike Chude is a public affairs analyst, and thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. We hope. We really hope.
We do. But we have to keep on working at it. It's not about hope, but working towards the hope too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Watch and pray.
Yeah.